Good morning. Good morning. And welcome to the Caucus event this morning, celebrating African American excellence. This is Carolyn Coleman, and I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the League of California Cities. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you. To the Caucus President, Walt Allen, thank you for your steadfast commitment to this important organization over so many years and for your friendship. And Marla, thank you for being such a fabulous Caucus Executive Director. To the African American Caucus members, I want you to know I'm so proud of you. You've come a long way since 1998 when the caucus was first established. Today, you have a full board and I know are working very hard to build programs and events that will enhance and equip African American leaders to serve their communities. You're also a great partner to Cal Cities, coordinating participation within the organization through membership on the Cal Cities board. I'm going to acknowledge my board members, Mayor Portia Middleton from Citrus Heights, and our President Walt Allen from West Covina. Congratulations and thank you for being such great board members. You're also very active and engaged on our policy committees, which is so central to our strong and effective advocacy, as well as engaged in our departments and regional divisions. So you all have a footprint as a caucus across this organization, and that's important. You've also been, let me say, a very good friend to me. Some of you who are here today helped welcome me to California and Cal Cities in what was now over 5 years ago. And you welcomed me as the first African American executive director of this 120-plus-year-old amazing organization. Know that it was a very warm welcome that I will always treasure. And as we come together today to celebrate African American excellence, know that on behalf of my board of directors, I celebrate all of you. So I look forward to a great program with you today. And with that, it's my honor to turn the program over to President Walt Allen. Walt?
Carolyn, thank you for your leadership. One of the best things the League did was bring you to California. You have done such an outstanding job as the executive director and CEO of Cal Cities. I want to thank you again, Carolyn, for your outstanding leadership. Today we celebrate Black History Month, and we honor all of the coveted individuals that came before us, that paved the way for us, and indirectly made it possible for us to be here today. And today's discussion will center around Black education and economics and how it can close Black achievement and wealth gaps to empower our communities, propelling Black excellence in California now and in the future. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, if you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. And if you can't walk, then crawl. But whatever you do, keep moving forward. Today's panelists are going to help us do just that. And all of you present this morning that are going to watch this wonderful panel discussion are in leadership positions, and you can help deliver improvements in our communities. With that, I'd like to thank you all for being here today. And at this time, I would like to introduce one of our panelists, Candice Mays, who is the current director of the Black Mapping Project. And through her efforts, we're taking technology to help move our communities forward. Candice, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much for introducing me, Walt. Marla, if you could share your screen, please. Thanks so much for having me, and good morning to all of the members of the League of California Cities African American Caucus and additional attendees present today. My name, as Walt mentioned, is Candice Mays, and I am the project director of Mapping Black California. Go ahead to the next slide, Marla. Mapping Black California was launched in partnership with Black Voice News and the League of California Cities African American Caucus as an initiative to better understand, report on, and visualize data on Black Californians in 2015. The initiative utilizes geospatial technology to enhance community news and storytelling. NBC's goal is straightforward: to equip the state's population with data-driven knowledge on all things Black and data in California to eliminate regional and local systemic inequities. Our previous data visualization work includes, we're still on the other slide, I'll let you know, Marla. Our previous data visualization work includes a California statewide hard to count map, visualizing Black populations by census tract, a racism as a public health crisis dashboard, tracking statewide declarations and responses, a visualization of Los Angeles's complex ethnic media ecosystem. Marla, if you could please go back to the logo slide. And our work in mapping has led us to understand just how strong the need for better disaggregated data is, and led us in 2021 to develop our first flagship project, a data hub dubbed The Hub. The Hub is a Google News initiative funded data hub that allows us to better share and store our curated data sets for analysis and accessibility. It's still in development with a data management firm called AVP. We all know the importance of data, and we all know just how hard it can be to find the right data, particularly when it comes to Black people. NBC faced this very challenge, and as we struggled with our own attempts to produce more data-supported visualizations and reporting, we started asking the question: how might we make data sets, visualizations, and reporting on racial justice and equity more accessible to Black-led organizations on the ground doing the work? In order to make something for Black-led orgs, we first needed a comprehensive statewide database of Black-led orgs, but one did not already exist. My team scoured the internet, borrowed from pre-existing lists, and tapped network resources to compile as comprehensive a list as 18 months of work could manage. Many of the groups we presented to asked us, what exactly is a Black-led org? Well, we characterize it as an organization as Black-led, utilizing the definition outlined by ABFE, Leverage the Trust in California. Black-led organizations are those that have Black leadership and control of decision-making, including a Black CEO, a predominantly Black board, and whose mission and intention is to have a positive impact on Black communities. You may notice a flow chart on this slide, and that's because we realized as a part of our research that if we're only looking at Black-led organizations who have a Black CEO or a Black board, predominantly Black board, that we would be excluding organizations who may not be Black-led, but are Black guided. And so those are also included as part of our work in our database. Not only did we develop a database, but we also turned it into a map to ease navigation because mapping's kind of our thing. Marla, feel free to go ahead and click on the map. As you can see, our map has a base layer, and our base layer was first contracted by SoCalGas, who wanted to see how COVID was impacting Black communities in their service territories. If you could please click on San Bernardino, Marla. We mined our base layer data from census data, the Healthy Places Index, Bureau of Labor Statistics, California Department of Health, and the USA News World Report. And what we were able to do was develop a score that identifies specific indicators of a community's health, job security, housing security, employment security, as already mentioned, and education. San Bernardino is a particularly high-risk community. And if you can scroll to the top of that list, you'll see their overall risk score is 56 out of an 80. And their most risk need sector, if you can scroll down a little bit, Marla, to the next one, is health. Health and employment are San Bernardino's highest risk needs. However, what we noticed with our analysis was that there aren't many organizations in the region serving these needs. As an early version of this map was initially granted by SoCalGas as a way, they wanted to let data be the decision maker driving their grant making efforts. And with this base layer, we were able to guide them to highest needs in the highest need areas, including places like San Bernardino. SoCalGas was then able to quickly click on the overlaid BLOs and identify the BLOs addressing those needs by service area. So Marla, if you could please click on one of the plot points. Each plot point in the map is a Black-led organization in California. In this particular set, you're still on the base layer. Feel free to click on one outside of the county if that helps. There we go. This would default in the middle of a presentation. There we go. So here we have an organization, the Black Culture Foundation. We feature with our database, we state the purpose of the organization. We state the contact information for how funders and other interested organizations can get in touch with the Black Culture Foundation, as well as identify in the service area of this organization. So for example, if SoCalGas identifies in San Bernardino County that employment is high risk and they want to donate more funds to positively impact this sector, they can identify organizations specializing in labor in San Bernardino very easily utilizing this visualized database. There's an opportunity for networking and genuine partnership building, not only between BLOs and funders, but BLOs and BLOs region-wide, statewide, and even nationwide to create coordinated strategic approaches to addressing longstanding disparities in the Black community, utilizing this database and the hub. This work for us is clearly a work in progress. We are learning while doing and learning together, and Mapping Black California walked that talk just last week. Feel free to return to the PowerPoint and go to the next slide, Marla. Thank you so much. SoCalGas sponsored a focus group held by the Center for Nonprofit Management, where we asked dozens of attendees representing Black-led organizations statewide about how data not only impacts and influences their work, but could also improve it. Their response was loud and clear, and I've listed some of those responses here. Have regular sessions like this based on regions to see who people are face-to-face and explore potential collaborations. One of the obstacles we identified in trying to find the Black-led org statewide was that a lot of times organizations were unaware of who other organizations were, and there was really a decentralized approach to networking in the state of California. And we aim to change this in order to increase collaboration and coalition building. A second goal was what really spawned this database to begin with. For the philanthropic community, this would have really helped in 2020 when focus was on looking for Black-led orgs to help. When potential donors found us, we asked how they found us, and it took a lot of steps. We're seeking with the Hub BLO to remove all of these steps to make it easier for Black-led organizations to be identified, celebrated, and supported for the work that they're doing that often goes unnoticed. And last but not least, the final most standout comment was share with government officials, community action teams in the SPAs, chambers of commerce, and other nonprofit associations, which is exactly why I'm here talking to you about the Hub BLO database today. The Hub BLO is an intersectional digital resource and platform where BLOs can expand capacity, grow with data, and build community. As an incubator of Afrofuturistic thinking, innovation, and problem solving, the Hub BLO will be a virtual space where data not only identifies gaps, but provides BLOs with tools, resources, and networks needed to fill those gaps with sustainable solutions. This isn't just about data, it's about coalition building. You feel free to go to the next slide, Marla. Thank you all again so much for having me here today. It's really been an honor. If you are interested in supporting the work, if you're interested in collaborating or just interested in learning more, email me. My email is listed here on the PowerPoint slide. It's Candice@voicemediaventures.com. Thanks again for having me, and I look forward to seeing the rest of today's program.
Thank you so much, Candice. Hi, everyone. My name is Marla Matime, and I am the Executive Director for the African American Caucus. And today we are celebrating Black History Month by presenting to you the Vision of Black Excellence, a virtual roundtable talk about Black excellence in California and beyond. I am your moderator for today, and our topic of discussion surrounds that of Black excellence, Black education, Black economics, and Black empowerment. Today, I have the honor of bringing forth Dr. Margaret Fortune, President and CEO of Fortune School, a graduate of UC Berkeley and Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. Dr. Fortune oversees 9 K-12 public charter schools in Sacramento and San Bernardino counties, with a combined enrollment for more than 2,300 students. Fortune also operates Rex and Margaret Fortune School of Education, a graduate school that credentials teachers and school administrators for over 60 public school systems, and the goal of addressing the state's teacher shortage. Her top priority is centered around closing the African American achievement gap. She serves on the board of the National Action Network Sacramento chapter and is an elected member of the Democratic Party Black Caucus. And additionally, she has served as an education advisor to 2 California governors. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Fortune.
Thank you so much, Marla.
Next up, we have the pleasure of welcoming Veronica Smith, CEO and founder of Impact Community Partners and author of the book, When Communities Disappear. Veronica delivers strategic advisory, community, and economic development services to public and private sector clients. She has worked in the economic development space for over 18 years and has also worked alongside the first African American to serve as mayor of Sacramento. Veronica earned an MBA from National University and a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from California State University, Sacramento. Thanks for joining, Veronica.
Thank you for having me.
Our next guest is Welton Jordan, Chief Real Estate Development Officer for EAH Housing. As the Chief Real Estate Development Officer at EAH, he is responsible for business development, real estate acquisition, renovation, and new construction activities in California and Hawaii. He presides over a current active pipeline of 60 deals totaling nearly $2 billion, while leading a team of more than 22 development professionals, including several newly created positions, such as Director of Development and Director of Portfolio Finance and Policy. Mr. Jordan has been with EAH Housing since 2013 and is the first person to be appointed to the Credo position in EAH Housing's 50+ year history. Mr. Jordan holds a Bachelor of Science in Economics with a minor in Finance from Southern University in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and has earned a Master of Arts in Economics from the University of Arkansas, Fayetteville, Pig Sooie. He holds a certificate as a housing development finance professional from the National Development Council. Welcome, Welton.
Thank you. Happy Black History Month.
Likewise. And last but not least, we have Jovan Agee, CEO and President of Agee Global Solutions, and has nearly 20 years of experience in lobbying political campaigns, community development, business development, real estate development, procurement, and fundraising. Jovan's expertise has positioned him as a highly sought after strategist and business architect. His skills and passions have helped to grow organizations, businesses, and communities through government and public affairs. Additionally, he was involved in over 100 elections and boasts a win rate of both races and propositions of over 75%. Jovan has also been instrumental in raising over $3 million for political action committees that he's either created from the ground up or has been hired to bolster. Recently, Jovan served as the Deputy Treasurer for the state of California, and he's developed a strategy to allocate over $8 billion in tax-exempt private activity bonds and $1 billion in low-income housing and tax credit to spur affordable housing and economic development in California. His focus areas include building the membership base and increasing the number of monthly recurring contributors to the newly formed Impact California. Mr. Agee has earned his BA degree in government from Sacramento State. Welcome onto the program, Jovan.
Thank you for having me.
I am just so tickled pink to have all of you here. My first question I'd like to direct towards Dr. Fortune. Dr. Fortune, what has been your experience with transformative leadership within the youth?
Well, I have the opportunity, Marla, to work with young people every day. And our program, which is pre-K through 12 public school system that we have founded because of charter schools. We're able to do that. I've been able to be with kids from the time they're in kindergarten on through graduation.
Mhm.
And what we find is in this work to close the African American achievement gap, that more time pays off. We believe in high expectations, choice and commitment, more time, focusing on results and citizenship. And it turns out if you practice school, you get better at it.
Okay.
And we have found that our scholars have moved beyond achievement gaps and are now really driving leadership discussions. I'll give you a practical example. Two of my scholars are going to present on February 19th to the California Democratic Party Black Caucus on effective programs for Black youth from their perspective, having participated in the program. So oftentimes we talk about young people, but they don't actually have an opportunity to speak for themselves.
Mhm.
And we're giving them that opportunity. And the extraordinary thing is that when you listen to them, they have a lot of lessons for leaders.
Right. Right. Out of the mouth of babes, right?
Right.
Right. So my next question for you then is you mentioned the achievement gap. How large is the achievement gap? And in what ways do you think that we can continue to work on closing the gap? And are we even close to closing it?
Well, the reason why my school system exists, Marla, is that the Sacramento County Board of Education made a finding of fact that there's a severe and persistent African American achievement gap that exists in all 13 of the county's school districts. So it didn't matter where a Black parent went or goes, they would confront this achievement gap if they enroll their child in a traditional public school.
Mhm.
So we started a school actually first in San Bernardino called Hardy Brown College Prep, which is now one of the highest performing majority Black schools in the state. And it's beating the odds. Over 68% of Black kids aren't reading or writing at grade level in California. About 70% aren't doing mathematics at grade level. Over 80% aren't doing science at grade level. So those are the gaps. They've existed for decades, but there are Black educators who are founding schools in various public education spaces that are defying the odds. Watts Learning Center, very high performing school that is one of the highest performing in the state of California. The Wilders Academies in Inglewood, another example of a Black family who's come forward and founded schools that are beating the odds. Cowan Avenue Elementary School, which is a school in the Los Angeles Unified School District, over 70% Black, one of the highest performing schools in California.
Wow.
So this work is being done. Interestingly, there are about 12 schools in the state of California that are majority Black and in the top half of academic performance. And most of those schools were founded by Blacks themselves.
Wow.
And really this conversation is a conversation about academic rigor. So, and there's a connection to cities, right? Great cities have great schools. Great schools, to my colleagues who are in the real estate business, drive home values up. The latest project that I've done is, we educate children, but we also, build schools. So the latest project that we've done is to create an 8-acre campus hosting 3 schools with 66,000 square feet, called the Rex and Margaret Fortune Education Complex. And we built it during the pandemic in Elk Grove. We bought the 8 acres from KB Homes. So around us in the, if you know the Elk Grove community, it's the last part of Elk Grove to be developed, and it's farmland.
Wow.
And there's our school, and then there's a bunch of new housing that's being developed around our school. And the reason why we were able, Marla, to build that school is because even before the plans for the city were approved by the Planning Commission and the City Council, the mayor reached out to me and said, this is the plan. We want to attract education partners. Will Fortune think about coming to Elk Grove?
Wow.
And it took us 5 to 7 years, but that building has 800 children in it right now. 65% of them are African-American.
Mhm.
And the high school students that are there are concurrently enrolled at Consumnes River College. And when they graduate from high school, they earn their associate's degree in general science. And they're, if they get into Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, which is one of our educational partners, they get a free full ride scholarship.
Wow.
And they've cut 2 years off the cost and time to a college degree because they're entering as freshmen, but as soon as they enroll, they get junior standing,
Right.
which is a $56,000 savings to their families. So we sit at the juncture of economic development,
Mhm.
education, college savings, and developing our next workforce.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention, you talk about the cost savings, like that is one great way to definitely build economic development in our communities by setting them up for success. My next question is directed towards Veronica. What do you think that we can do as a community to ensure that vision is aligned within organizations that are working to implement more diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Oh, that's a great question, and it's a loaded question. And I think that first and foremost, to the point around vision, we have to make sure that we collectively understand what the vision really is.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that are, if they're not supporting or attached to policies that are truly moving the needle in our communities, then we have to really ask ourselves, what are we doing? Mm-hmm. So if we think first and foremost about just the numbers, we have to better define what it is that we're trying to quantify. We have to better define what it is that we're truly advocating and asking for when we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. For instance, it wouldn't be wise for us to solely focus on representation, solely focus on increasing the numbers of Black bodies in seats, since this is a Black conversation. If that transfer or if that increase doesn't translate or transfer to an increase in economic opportunity or economic policies that will support and sustain the ability for there to be collective economic increase for people in our communities, as it relates to the push for more representation. So I'm a really big policy person. And so in all of these I'll just say buzzwords, because they can be buzzwords if we're not using them properly. If they're not truly advancing our economic needle, then we have some work to do. Can there really be accountability, or are we box checking? How are we measuring and sustaining success for ourselves? So diversity, equity, and inclusion can be dangerous words for us if they're not leveraged properly, and inclusion will just remain an illusion, to be quite honest, if we're not doing our part.
In your book, When Communities Disappear, you talk about the 3 common factors, which is policy, politics, and poverty, as it pertains to gentrification, eviction, and displacement. Can you tell us how these 3 factors specifically affect the Black community?
Well, if we think for a moment about what shaped the Black community and Black neighborhoods here in the United States, it was anti-Black policies for the most part, right? If we just begin with slavery. So, policies are advanced by people, our politicians. And if we look at the residual effects of these original policies, it translates into the conditions that we see today in our neighborhoods. So you all, some of you are probably familiar with Dr. Claude Anderson, and I love the way that he lays out or speaks to what true communities really are. And, you know, that would be communities are of mind and physical structures within a space. Both are important, but no traditional society built on land that it didn't own or control has been successful or prospered. So when we think about the three factors that are impacting our communities, we think about eviction, displacement, and gentrification, we really have to take it back to the beginning of time and understand how Black communities were originally built to see how far left or far right we've come as it relates to progress that we've made as the Black community here in the United States. But we also have to get better at understanding the distinction between a neighborhood and a community. So oftentimes we will find ourselves fighting to remain in a place that we never really had ownership of in the first place. And so going back to policies, if we understand the policies that influence things like gentrification, eviction, displacement, we'll be better positioned to mitigate or to fight these things. And it all begins with ownership, and again, with people. People that are advancing the policies that put us in a position of ownership, then some of these things aren't relevant to us. They aren't our fears, they aren't our realities if we're beginning with ownership.
Before I go to Welton, I want to take it back to Dr. Fortune and ask you, in what ways can we begin educating our youth about economic development and empowering them to become active in educating others in their communities?
Well, I was really, Marla, intrigued by what Veronica said about the impact of ownership. And sometimes we fight for things and systems that never belong to us. You know, I get a lot of flack for being a charter school leader because some people perceive it as not being a part of the public school system. But the way I got here was through advising 2 governors on education, participating in committees to try and improve neighborhood schools as a volunteer, and always meeting with frustration that the kids were not performing well in the space where they spent the majority of their time. And then the community would try to come in through after-school programs and tutoring and fix it on the weekends or fix it after school. And it's an uphill battle. So it finally occurred to me to say, wait a minute, there's an avenue through the public schools, which is a public charter school, to just run the whole thing. What would schools look like if we ran the whole school? You know, I have 271 employees, and I hired each and every one of them to focus on closing the Black achievement gap. If your face changes when I say the Black achievement gap, I don't hire you. And as it turns out, the children are watching. So getting to the heart of your question, a part of how we empower students to, you know, for their own development is we put them in settings where they can be a part of it and observe. We had a focus group of our students, middle school and high school students, about whether or not they were aware that they had a Black CEO. And they said they were acutely aware. And they said that they watch me. They watch how I come into a room. They watch how I present myself. They watch what I wear. It was reading what they had said was extraordinary. Because what they perceived themselves as attending was a mini HBCU. That's how they described it. And through this environment that was created by and for Black people, yes, with public dollars, because we pay taxes too, and there's no reason why we should attend public schools that predominantly fail our children, and I have the data to show it. There's no reason why we should sign up for that.
Right.
That they have an ecosystem of Black organizations that are a part of this school. Candice's presentation was intriguing to me because it was a way of scientifically getting to that ecosystem of Black organizations. These kids are in an environment where they have exposure to the Divine Nine, Black elected officials, Black leaders, Black principals. And because of that, they are internalizing the lessons of Black leadership and playing it out in their own lives. And I'll stop here. Pursuing entrepreneurship as an example, starting their own businesses as teenagers at ages that are far younger than for my generation, I'm Generation X. I even kind of conceived that was a possibility. They're just doing it. And they're also teaching me lessons in what my expectations should be as a Black woman in workplaces, so the learning goes both ways from one generation to the next.
Yes, yes. No, that's great. So Welton, Dr. Fortune had mentioned communities like Elk Grove and her school moving into a community such as that. Where are we today in terms of affordable housing in California? And where do you see this trend leaning towards within the next decade?
So I think it kind of goes without saying that, the price, especially here in California, rent is too damn high. I think that was the saying that we used to hear a lot. So when you think about, the price of land and renting and that kind of stuff, affordable housing is needed. It's a foundation, for your life if you come from meager backgrounds. And it needs to be in places around other opportunities. Veronica was talking about, planning and where Dr. Fortune School is around a new subdivision by KB Homes. I know who KB Homes is. They're a for-profit entity, and I'm pretty sure those houses will be largely unaffordable to a lot of folks in the Elk Grove and Sacramento area community. So for what I've chosen to kind of latch onto for a career is building affordable housing. Is where I came from. I grew up in public housing, and to be able to latch on to that and try to make an impact in this space is something where I feel it's important, and also kind of it's a lot of work, a lot of stress, but it does give you a fulfillment of at least trying to help, again, doing my part, if you will. So affordable housing isn't going anywhere. There's a stark need, and business is good as it relates to trying to build it, but it is very difficult, takes a very long time, but it is rewarding in the end.
Why would you say it's important for more African Americans to enter real estate development?
There's a variety of reasons. I think one is, a lot of this is built in Black communities. So having someone with lived experience, instead of kind of guessing what the needs are, kind of coming from it and knowing what those needs are. Like I was saying, concrete floors, vinyl, a lot of stuff you learn about housing, how it's built, how it's selected, where it goes. And the other piece is, learning about ownership and improvement of an asset. When you learn the entire process from, prospecting a piece of land, the market, where it would fit, rents to charge, who might live there, designing, planning, the intersection between, politics, banking, and ultimately getting it built and people moving in and managing it long term. It's a unique skill set. A lot of people just don't have it. You may know pieces, but getting to understand the full kind of soup to nuts, there's just not a lot of people out there that understand it, period. So I think it's a big space. There's significantly less Black men and women in this space than needs to be. So I think it's something that, as I wish I would have known about it a lot earlier. But for young men and women coming into college and thinking about what they want to do once they get out of it, look into real estate development. It's a very lucrative field for some of us, and it's, again, it teaches you life skills. It teaches you a lot of different things. You know, you deal with a variety of different people, variety of different backgrounds, and then you get to see how the dots connect from why did this development go in this space? It's so many different moving parts that is very difficult to explain in a short amount of time, but it's very interesting to kind of see how it all connects in the end.
Thank you. Jovan, what do you think is the role of Black electeds in helping those to close the wealth gap between Black and white Californians? And also, this goes for closing the achievement gap that Dr. Fortune has been discussing within our educational system.
Yeah, before I answer the question, I'm just so in admiration with this panel in this conversation.
Yes.
I mean, to me, it's amazing to see. To me, this is the future of California Black leadership. But to answer your question, I think that first and foremost, it must be articulated. Not often enough in any resolution, policy, platform, bill, regulatory activity, press release, there's even a mention of wealth or economic empowerment. We are overly social policy focused without understanding that the poor outcomes that we see with our social determinants are often rooted in economic outcomes. And so I think there needs to be a learning curve that is bridged with many Black electeds before running or before deciding to run, upon running, and then if fortunate enough to win on the governance side. I believe that every Black elected, every elected in general, particularly Black electeds, need to have some sort of economic advisor. They need to have someone in their operation that if they're thinking about education policy, health policy, public safety, land use policy, they need to be looking at it through the lens of not only social outcomes, what are the economic outcomes? And I'm not talking about one-time stimulus activities, but I'm talking about circulation of dollars. So what are economic policies that can be advanced that circulate to create independence? Because I think one of the things that you're hearing stated is that there is no true power without independence. So when you hear the term CEO, or I'm starting schools so that I can control them, or we must own our neighborhoods, that is independence. So when we talk about Black power, which I heard the term buzzword being used, there is no Black power without Black independence. There's no Black independence without a Black agenda that can be supported through intellectual as well as financial capital. So I think we have a long way to go in terms of establishing a Black community. We need to come together as individuals and collectively to figure out what is our Black agenda. How do we advance the necessary intellectual capital pieces and financial capital pieces so that we can have true Black power in the state and advance things for the betterment for people that look like you and I?
You know, I wanted to ask you, and Veronica actually mentioned this during her discussion on gentrification. Is community revitalization possible without gentrification?
That question was for me?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Yes. I mean, I think who is sponsoring or facilitating the community revitalization is critically important. And so I think you've heard in many iterations of the questions you've answered responses from our panelists who have been in positions to facilitate different forms of community revitalization, whether it's the residential space, as you've heard with Welton, whether it's the ideation aspect that you hear from Veronica, or whether it's the facilitation of educational outcomes that come through land use manipulation that you hear from Dr. Fortune. Those are all different ways that you facilitate community revitalization. But depending on who sits in the helms or in the driver's seat also depends on who benefits or who is marginalized. And so when I think you hear about the staff composition and makeup of Fortune Schools, it's not coincidental that it is consistent with who the leader is. Nor is it any different when you look at Welton, leading operations for EAH housing. Right. Or many of the work that Veronica does in terms of standing up and advising businesses and governance opportunities in terms of the ideas that get promoted and the recommendations as to who should be hired to execute those ideas. So I think, terminology is something that was mentioned on this call, and I think the whole notion of gentrification has to be understood. It's not necessarily being a bad thing, but is seen as something that if change is going to occur, who should be the appropriate people facilitating that change to ensure that the right groups of people or the intended groups of people are included in the process.
Hey, Marla, can I jump in to pick up on something that Giovanna said?
Absolutely, Dr. Fortune. I actually was just about to say, you know, that's the end of the moderated discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and just open it up for our round table. And we have about 10 minutes left on our program. So go ahead.
So something that Giovanna is saying is really interesting. And it's it's like you see communities develop through gentrification, but it's also about who city leaders decide to empower to do a thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give some practical examples from Sacramento. Oak Park is a community that is about equally divided, Black, Latino, Asian, and it has become gentrified. It used to be the case. I was the first superintendent of St. Hope Public Schools, which Kevin Johnson started when he was an NBA basketball player. It used to be the case that the community was lots of housing and hotels that needed to be developed and that type of thing. And now that vision has taken off. But if you go to the Oak Park Neighborhood Association, it's also predominantly white. So it's kind of like you kind of walk down the street and say, wow, there are white folks in the neighborhood now. That feels different, right? But go to a community like Meadowview. Like a recent decision was made. There was 100 acres available that the federal government owned in Meadowview. And there was an auction of that land. And we participated in the auction because I wanted to turn that into a historically Black college on the West Coast. That's what I wanted to site there. Because that's the next project at Fortune Schools, that we're going to create a historically Black college in Sacramento. So I talked to Matsui's office and said, we'd like to buy this land. Mm-hmm. So we participated in the auction, but the winner of the auction was actually the city of Sacramento.
Oh, wow.
And they announced in the newspaper that what they were going to site there was homeless shelters. Homelessness is an important issue in California. Mm-hmm. But Meadowview has become the place where homeless shelters have been located. More so than in other areas that have equally poor outcomes when it comes to housing. If you ask the community what they wanted, they probably wouldn't say, let's make that 100 acres into homeless shelters.
Right.
When Stephon Clark was shot and killed by the Sacramento police, we joined with the family, the Clark family, and with pastors in the area, like Pastor Tacoy Porter, who Reverend Al Sharpton put in charge of the National Action Network in Sacramento, because Stephon was killed by the police. And we turned tragedy into triumph. And we built a school there, and the Stephon Clark playground. And I'm going to build Stephon Clark Middle School. The choices that we made as a community in Meadowview was to build schools that would serve Black communities to a level of excellence. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about does gentrification have to happen in order for a community to improve? No, it doesn't. Mm-hmm. But the leaders in that community who are elected leaders who are in a position to make decisions have to recognize talent amongst Black people, right, who have their own ideas about how that community could evolve. And in this practical example, what we passed up was an HBCU on the West Coast that could have had housing around it for faculty and students, that could have been connected to a K-12 vision for excellence. So I think as elected leaders, we have to really pay attention to who we listen to.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I'm glad that you brought that up, because that was going to be one of my questions. And Jovan, I'd like for you to maybe respond to this. What can Black leaders in each sector do to ensure that we're informing the Black community of equitable access to funding, housing, and education?
I think it's critically important as to once making the decision to run, who you hire as your campaign consultant, campaign manager is critically important. Many individuals will bring people on that only are thinking about collecting a paycheck. They're not really thinking about the continuity and the importance of getting someone in the seat that can govern appropriately for the future of opportunities that we're talking about. So I think, that's a critical piece. But once that happens, I think it's important, again, to have some sort of cabinet. It's not only the president who needs a cabinet, right? I think at every level of government, you need some sort of intellectual capital around you that has an expertise that is particularly rooted in self-determination, Afrocentric viewpoints, if that is your agenda. Again, I think that, we can't assume or guess that all Black electeds, that's their focus. But if it is, I think that becomes critically important because there's just a knowledge gap. I see it all the time. Cities, now, because of the competitive nature of resource at the state level, are looking to pass more and more housing bonds. So they have more money to put on the table to become competitive in the state's eyes. Well, are Black consultants getting those opportunities to run those housing bonds? Are Black data analysts, the ones that are being hired on the political campaigns to do all the data research to see how the communication strategy should be to pass a housing bond? If the bond is successful to be passed, are Black investment bankers being the ones given the opportunity to do municipal bond finance and management? These are all areas of gaps where there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to create Black wealth. And so I think there has to be participation from interested Black electeds in spaces like this. I think we need to figure out how to bottle this, take this on the road, almost force feed this to some people. And I think figure out how to get those who like to be philanthropic for the Black community to underwrite these kind of conversations. Because I think it's going to be very far few and in between that, one, there's the understanding that a panel like this needs to be assembled. What value individuals like us bring to those who are trying to help the Black community. And then also understanding the gap that many of these individuals who think that they are leaders because maybe they've led in some social space like their church or some community club or some fraternal group, the difference between that and actually leading in a civic space where you're dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars and sometimes billions of dollars that can, in one, signing of a bill can change the economic outcomes. And so, there's just a whole laundry list of things that, I'm going to kind of get into in my closing for those who are hopefully listening, that they can take out their, pen and paper and start jotting down just a list of tangible things that they should immediately go back to their city halls and start to ask questions about in terms of better understanding how they can be influential in the seats that they sit in.
Thank you for that, Jovan. We're actually coming close to ending our program. So I'm going to do a round robin. I'll go ahead and just do a round robin. 30 seconds. Veronica, Welton, Dr. Fortune, and Jovan. Veronica, you're up.
You would choose me first, but I'll just end with, as it relates to strategy and specifics around Black excellence. We have a model on this call today, on this Zoom today, in Margaret, Fortune, and Fortune schools. So with the theme being Black excellence, I think that the model from a strategic perspective is in Fortune schools because it transcends education. And so if we take it back to thinking about the distinction, first and foremost, between neighborhood versus community, we look at Margaret's model because it's touching everything that we're talking about, everything that we need to be talking more about as it relates to excellence. Let's adopt it. But first, it begins with our collective agenda being right, our collective support of each other being right. I believe that HBCU can still be on Meadowview, on that 100-acre site, because it's not going to all be used for homeless housing. And I'm willing to bet on that. we need to support her. That needs to happen. The skill set is on this call to help make that happen. And I'll leave that there.
Thank you. Welton, you're up, 30 seconds.
Again, thanks for having me. Honored to be here and to be able to participate. You know, I would just kind of echo what Veronica is saying. It's, I mean, you know, community it's up here, you know, it starts here. So we just need to keep these conversations going, connecting more dots, making sure that, you know, we're scattered, you know, to an extent. So making sure that, you know, we know where other people are who are like-minded, you know, creating a Black agenda, getting on code and continuing to move the progress forward.
Thank you, Welton. Dr. Fortune.
Well, Veronica, I just wrote down all the names on this panel because you said we have the resources here to make it happen, and I believe you. I think my closing words are be bold. Our time on this earth is limited. If we can connect the dots and pursue our passions and spend our most precious intellectual resources in advancement of the Black community, then we can make the difference that other generations made for us so that we could be here. And I find this to be true, Marla, even if we're in a situation where Blacks are in the minority in the city or the body that we represent. Blacks are only 5 to 6% of Sacramento. Mm-hmm. But there's still really significant game-changing work that can be done. And I'll close with this. Whatever position I've held, whether it was an advisor to governors or a trustee on the California State University Board of Trustees, I've always said, I'm going to use this position to advance Black people. And I haven't made a secret of it. I've said it straight up. I would encourage us all to take that approach.
Thank you, Dr. Fortune. We love you for it. Be bold. Be bold. Jovan, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I have to put on my second set of eyes. I'm getting older. But really quickly, I want to get a laundry list of things. So for all you know, local Black electeds, ways to put opportunity in the individual as well as collective Black community. Let's look at municipal bond management. That's one area. If you don't understand how municipal bonds are managed in your city, please reach out. I can help you figure that out. Real estate development, surplus sites. That's another area. If you don't know what surplus sites exist in your city, you should. Contract opportunities. Who's getting contracts to do various aspects of works in your city? I used, you know, running political campaigns around housing bonds is just one example, but there are many more. Hiring senior executive staff is critically important. Who is the chief of staff in your office? Oftentimes, depending on the size of your city, that's anything from a $60,000 to $120,000 a year job. And if that person is someone who has a very Afrocentric and self-determinant focus, a lot can be done to operationalize and execute the vision that you have for the people that you're hoping to help. And then lastly, as I said before, hiring Black political consultants. We are part of a dying breed in many instances. It's hard to find any true senior Black political consultants left in California, unfortunately. And that is a way that you can make a substantial amount of money doing work to help get people elected, so that once they're sitting in these seats, we're not trying to twist arms and convince people who then sort of say, why should I care? I got here without you. So hiring Black political consultants on the front end while people are running increases the likelihood that they'll want to listen to you once elected. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Jovan. So at this time, I'm calling Ken Maxey up, but our president, the lovely Walt Allen, Councilmember from Covina, would like to
This was absolutely unbelievable. We're going to bottle this up today, right? And we need to share this wealth with all our Black elected officials. And I think, Dr. Fortune, I think you've just given us a project at the league level to see if there's anything we can do. And I know Carolyn's still on. Carolyn, I know you're just as amazed as I am with the presentation by the panelists. So I want to turn it back over to Marla, but I want to thank all of you for the magnificent information you've shared today. And like I said, we're going to bottle this up, make it available to our caucus membership and Black elected officials throughout California. Can't thank you enough. We need to do this again. Margaret, I need to get a hold of you because I'm on the philanthropic board for Cal Poly Pomona. And you need, I don't know if you've linked up with President Dr. Coley. We need to talk. So that's something, I'll get your info and we can talk. Thank you all. And I'll get off and give it back to Marla.
Thank you, Walt. Carolyn, would you like to say anything else?
I'm just going to say amen and amen. And thanks so much to all of our panelists for your wisdom and for being here and sharing your story. To Ken, it's always a pleasure to get to work with you. So thank you for your ongoing support. As I said in the chat, my heart is full this morning, and what a difference you all have made in my day. Thank you, Marla.
Thank you. So at this time, I will turn it over to our supporter and sponsor for this event, Ken Maxey with Comcast. And before you all jump off, we do want to share a short video for Music Changing Lives, because supporting organizations like Music Changing Lives has the ability to empower our youth to follow their dreams and passion, thus showcasing Black excellence. So Ken, it's all yours.
Well, happy Black History Month. Thank you, Marla. Thank you, Carolyn Coleman, for your leadership, and as well as Councilmember Walt Allen for your leadership. You know, I will not be long here. On behalf of Comcast, we just want to say we're here as a partner for the League of Cities and continue to support our caucuses because we believe in our DEI and belonging strategies and partnerships within the communities that we serve. You know, one of the things that we developed during the pandemic has been a program called Comcast Rise. And what that stands for is representation, investment, strength, and empowerment. Essentially what the program is for anyone that has a small business in our Comcast footprint that is a BIPOC or women-owned business can apply for programs that will help their business be promoted through a 60 to 90 second commercial that we will help produce, as well as a tech upgrade for your small business as well. So we hope that someone is listening throughout these cities in Northern California in particular, where the Comcast footprint is, so they can apply for the program and hopefully be a recipient of that. But moreover, I just want to thank Marla for her leadership. Her and I had a conversation about this and she took it and ran with it. She's a great leader for our community, as well as Carolyn Coleman, Walt, and all the panelists today. What a phenomenal group of leaders for the state of California. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to say a couple words on behalf of Comcast today. So I'll kick it back over to Ms. Marla for her presentation. Thank you.
Be strong, be beautiful.
Remember trapping on them highways, now I do it my way. Started like Beyonce, I send it to the hood and I should do whatever I say.
It's not that hard, you just have to keep practicing and practicing until you get it right.
I've been playing the violin since I was 3 and my first song was Twinkle Little Star.
love dancing and just communicate with others, like to share feelings with others.
Do you feel good? How are you feeling right now? You feel strong? You look strong.
You know how music makes you emotional? Happy, sad, and then all in the same thing. I just love that feeling. Like electronic.
So sometimes, like through tough things, music helps me.
From my Georgia on first squeeze up out that prison, you gonna lose when make a decision. If you test me, pit me running up with a steam.
Keep your head high.
Everyone is good at something. Rapping, producing, drawing, poem making, doing piano, singing, whatever you want, and you're gonna love it and you're gonna want to stick with it because you know that you love it thanks to Music Changes Life.